Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I'm going to have a very interesting and fun video for everybody. I think this is one that everybody will enjoy, and it is essentially a tier list of all U.S. presidents, including, or that goes up to President Trump. I'll be leaving out Joe Biden for this one, but I'll probably make another video if I find one with him. But I'll just tell you what I think he should be on the rankings. So without further ado, let's begin. So right away we got I think this is Zachary Taylor. Oh no, this is Franklin Pierce. Didn't really do much. He's kind of a boring guy. 13th president. I mean, he was what, 3 presidents before the Civil War. I want to put him at a D or an F. I think I'll put him at a D. I don't think he's quite terrible, but he was kind of useless. Then we got James Buchanan. This guy's an automatic F. I mean, the guy essentially did absolutely nothing to prevent the Civil War. Just a terrible guy. Garbage. F. Then we got the complete opposite, which is Abe Lincoln. I mean, there's nothing more to say about him. Straight to S. One of the only S tier presidents that'll be on this list. He reunited the country, didn't punish the South, got assassinated because of that by someone, John Wilkes Booth. But I think it's pretty agreed upon by everyone that this guy, and he also freed the slaves, by the way. That's probably the biggest thing. But I think it's pretty universally agreed upon that Abe Lincoln is one of the greatest presidents. He's usually number 1 or 2. Everybody pretty much has him in their top 3, but right away he's going to S. Andrew Johnson, F. Nothing more to say. I mean, he completely destroyed the country after, I wouldn't say destroyed the country, but he did nothing to fix the country during the Reconstruction period, and he was a complete Southern sympathizer. Didn't care at all for what Lincoln stood for. That's why he's going to F. Grant. Okay, this one's a tough one. A lot of people like to criticize Grant, but I don't know if I would put him. I think most people would put him somewhere in the middle. As a general, he's an S, but as a president, I think I'm going to put him at B. And the reason why is because I can't put him at A or S. It's not that important, but I'll put him at B because I want to put him at A, but you can't leave out the corruption stuff that he was involved, or that his party was involved in, rather. But he was a good president. Like, he helped the Reconstruction, destroyed the KKK, reunited the country. He was a pretty significant guy in that sense, like a pretty symbolic dude, and people loved him. So I think he's a pretty good president. I would put him at A, but I think B is fair, just based on the corruption stuff. Then we got Rutherford B. Hayes. He had a weird election. There's like a controversy. There's actually like essentially compromise that the Democrats did. So he was put in office, but he really didn't have much power. He's going to D. He really didn't do anything. He was kind of boring, kind of forced into the job. I mean, not forced into the job, but he had a tough hand that he was dealt. Then we got James Garfield. I truly believe that James Garfield could have been S tier if he had survived more than a year, but just based on what he was able to accomplish, there wasn't much. If I'm going based on his political career, I'd put him somewhere at a C. Like, he's a pretty accomplished guy when he was in politics. He established some educational institutions and did a lot of good stuff on that front. And then he became president, but he didn't really get to do much because he got assassinated within a year. So I'm just going to put him at C. Chester Arthur. Again, this guy, he was there for what, 2.5 years, 3 years after Garfield got assassinated. Didn't do much. He's going to D. He's not terrible. Like, he's not known for being a terrible president, but he's going to D. Grover Cleveland, only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms in history. Under him, the U.S. ended up becoming bankrupt. I mean, there's not much else that's really significant about Grover Cleveland. He was there during the whole Gilded Age, laissez-faire kind of time. Do I think he's a D tier? Not really. I think he's a C tier. He's just an average president. I don't think there's nothing special about him, but there's nothing that he did that's terrible. Benjamin Harrison, again, another guy who's kind of like a filler president, I would say. Didn't really do much. He's going to D. I'll skip over this guy because I can't tell who it is. I think, is that Monroe? Yeah, that's Monroe. Well, in the Monroe Doctrine, pretty significant in the founding writings. His presidency was kind of mid. It wasn't really incredible. I'll put him at C. William McKinley, yeah, another guy could have been pretty good. Got assassinated. I think he had good intentions, but he just wasn't able to see it. So, for those reasons, I'll put him at C for now. I may move him up, but we'll see about that. We got Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, I think most people put him at an A right away. I'll put him at a B. And the reason why I put him at a B is because while he did do a lot to crack down on big corporations, tried to break up the monopoly, Standard Oil, all that stuff, it really didn't last. It didn't last into the 20s and the 30s when the Great Depression happened. His policies didn't help in that. So if we're looking at it from a long-term basis, if he could have mitigated that and prevented it, he'd probably be an S, honestly. But don't think I could put him in an S. I think he was a good president. He was an outdoorsman, very strong guy, but kind of became weird at the end when he lost in the Republican nomination to his VP, William Howard Taft, who I will put at a D. William Howard Taft was not suited for the presidency. I think he's someone who is very legal-minded, and him being a president wasn't actually his biggest accomplishment. Many people have noted his biggest accomplishment, in his view, was actually being on the Supreme Court. So I don't think his presidency was very moving. He had that one tariff, which was kind of a big deal, but he was a one-term president, didn't really do much, doesn't really matter, so D tier. Woodrow Wilson, oh, this is a tough one. I think Wilson did a good job in World War I in the way he managed it, but all the free speech suppression and all that kind of stuff at home, the Espionage Act, that's just not right. And I think because of that, I have to put him at a C. I think, he's a good president, but in terms of the war, but in general, that kind of stuff is just not right. You can't do that. But yeah, I'll put him at a C. Warren G. Harding, again, another guy. This guy died in office. He got a heart attack or something. Again, I don't really know much about him. He's not really that moving. I'll put him at a D. Not much to say about him. But then his successor, Calvin Coolidge, took over. He was there for 6 years, I believe. And he was a very laissez-faire guy, but the economy was doing good. So I think the thing with Coolidge is, could he have prevented the Great Depression? Maybe. Maybe not. That's a question we'll never know the answer to, but I think just based on his policies and the laissez-faire mentality and the way the economy is doing so well, I think I'll put him at a B, which is pretty controversial, but I think based on what he did and the way he governed, it really embodied American capitalism. So I think that's fair to say that he's a B tier. Then we got Herbert Hoover. This guy's just terrible. Didn't know what the hell he was doing. He tried to pass a tariff. Just such a stupid guy. Smoot-Hawley tariff. What a disaster. This guy's a joke. FDR. I don't like FDR. And the reason why I say that is because him staying for more than 2 terms really just wasn't worth it. And the reason why I say that is because it was said that I think near the last 6 months of his life. It wasn't even him governing at that point. It was his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. So why was he still in power? Why was he still president? Why didn't he resign? But I think you can't discredit the New Deal and the Second New Deal and the war and the Great Depression. You can't discredit that. But I don't think he's an S tier. I don't. I'll put him in an A. I don't agree with many of his policies, but I think A is fair just based on how consequential he was. Then we got Harry Truman, who was a pretty big deal. He ended up ordering the dropping of the atomic bomb, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, he was there during the start of the Cold War. I think he was a good president. I'll put him at B. And I think if he had stayed, if he had taken over Roosevelt a bit earlier, before Roosevelt had died, I think he would be an A tier. Dwight D. Eisenhower, this guy was incredible. A tier, you know, military general, hero for the American people. And he went there, he made the highways and all that stuff. Just a good president, had good understanding of how to deal with adversaries. And we know very well that he advised our friend JFK on a lot of matters, who I will put at S tier. Actually, no, sorry. You know, I'll put him at A tier. JFK is my second favorite president, personally. I'm trying not to put any bias into this, but he was advised by Dwight D. Eisenhower during the Bay of Pigs, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, all that stuff. Keep in mind, Bay of Pigs was Eisenhower's idea. So, if you want to bring down JFK to B or whatever, remember, this guy was the one who came up with the idea. But this guy, you know, civil rights was really his idea. I don't think LBJ would have acted on it if JFK hadn't brought it up. With that being said, I'll do Quincy Adams. Quincy Adams was pretty much a lower tiered version of his father. Didn't really do much. Shouldn't have won the election against Jackson. It's kind of, they still call it kind of a rigged one because it was Congress that decided. So he shouldn't have been president. Let's be honest. I think he'll be in D tier. I think it's fair to say. LBJ, I'm putting him at A. Just based on legislation alone, LBJ is an A tier president. You know, he passed the Civil Rights Act, tried the Great Society. Actually, you know what? I'm bringing him down to B. The only thing that brings him down is Vietnam. Vietnam was one of the biggest colossal disasters in U.S. history. And honestly, that taints his reputation, no matter who you talk to. That's the only thing most people remember about Lyndon B. Johnson, alongside the Civil Rights Act. But Vietnam is like his downfall, and that's why he didn't seek re-election after serving 1.5 terms. We got Nixon, who actually lost to JFK in 1960. I'm a fan of Nixon, and I think overall he's a B tier president. I would put him at A, but I want to reserve this for the really, really good presidents. You know, strategy of détente, opening up relations with China, getting off the gold standard. He had a lot of accomplishments, but it's just Watergate that brings me down for him. I think, I don't know, if he had completed his term, he may have been an A president. I did not have any other controversies, but I think just Watergate in general, for pretty much everyone, brings him down on their rankings. Gerald Ford, I'll put him at C. He was dealt a bad hand. You know, he was Speaker of the House. He wasn't even Nixon's VP. So he was kind of thrust into the position. Pulled out of Vietnam. Complete disaster in Saigon. Didn't really have much else going on for him, honestly. He was only there for like a year and something like that. So pretty kind of president. Jimmy Carter, F. Iran hostage crisis, that's all I gotta say. This guy was a disaster. Economy was terrible. Just terrible. Reagan, A. I'm putting Reagan at A. I love this guy. He was so great. He was enthusiastic. He was passionate. You know, Reaganomics. People have, you know, there are different views on it, but his leadership during the Cold War is S tier. But overall, as president, I think he's A tier. You know, I mean, if he was so good that his VP actually succeeded him, who I will put him at B tier. I think George H.W. Bush was really good, but the Gulf War was, if we're basically on the Gulf War alone, S. Just the fact that the economy wasn't as good as it could have been, it breaks him down to B. But I think he's a very good president. I think he's underrated in many ways. Bill Clinton. As a person, I'd put him at F, but we're not ranking them on how they are as people. I think I'll put him at C. And the reason why I put him at C is economy was really good. Really, really good. Hold on one second. The economy was really good. There's no denying it. But his foreign policy was very, very passive. And he sort of paved the way. I wouldn't say paved the way, but sort of let 9/11 happen in the sense that he didn't crack down on terrorists in the Middle East. So I think that's, and he didn't even kill Osama bin Laden, even though he was told multiple times he had the opportunity to. So that's another thing that breaks him down quite a bit. His foreign policy was not really good. But then he was succeeded by George W. Bush, who had arguably one of the worst wars in history, the Iraq War, who many people are now calling one of the worst wars in U.S. history, behind Vietnam. I think he's going to C. His leadership after 9/11 was honestly as good as it gets. But Iraq was probably one of the biggest mistakes he's ever made, and I just think the fact there were no weapons of mass destruction, there was no reason to go in, is always going to hang over his head and his presidency. I'll just skip over Obama and Trump. I'll go over these ones. Andrew Jackson, the original populist, I want to say that he's an A, but he was kind of weird in his governing. You know, he ran as a populist. He was like the first populist president. Yeah, everybody says Trump is a populist. He's not a populist, but he was a decent president. I don't think he was the best. I think he was decent. I don't think he was the best though. Martin Van Buren, again, not really consequential. Didn't have much going on. Then we got, was this William Harrison? Yeah, this guy didn't. He died within 2 months. Didn't really do much. I mean, I feel bad for the guy, but you know, there's not much he really did. George Washington, S. Founder of the country. You know, hero during the American Revolution, during the Revolutionary War. People were saying, "We'll make you the king. We'll make you the king." He declined that, and he set the precedent for others to succeed him and not be the absolute ruler. Just based on that alone, he's already an S+ tier. But just in general, the guy's nearly perfect in the way that he was a person who was in a very high position of power. John Adams, I'm putting him at D. Alien Sedition Acts is all I need to say. XYZ affair didn't handle it well at all. The guy was notable, or was known as being someone who was very difficult to approach. Not many people liked him. There's not much else to say about him. He's not really a special guy. I think him and his son are rather similar. Maybe not in governing, but in terms of consequentiality as presidents, they're D tier. But I think as a person, as a founding father, he's definitely in the A to S tier because he was very significant. But that's all we're rating him on. Then we got Polk. I remember he did stuff with the Gold Rush. You know, he had a very famous State of the Union address in which he mentioned the Gold Rush. I just really don't know much about him other than that. I know that, he had the Mexican-American War, where they actually gained a lot of territory, so I got to give that to him. But overall, was he very consequential? Not really. I think he's a C tier. And by the way, who was William McKinley? Because he also presided or he also oversaw the Spanish-American War, which was a big territory boost for them, by the way. So I'll bump him to B tier just based on that alone. Then we got Madison. Again, he's another very incredible founding father. As a president, wasn't really consequential. I think I'll put him at C. Wasn't that big of a deal. Who's this? Hold on a second. Is this? I think this is Zachary Taylor. It's one of these two. This is Zachary Taylor. Yeah. Zachary Taylor. I think I just saw this somewhere. He's the only president to have been wrapped in a Confederate flag, like whose coffin was wrapped in a Confederate flag. Based on that alone, he's going F tier. He was a sympathizer for the South. Didn't really care about the Union as much as other presidents did. Like, just based on that, he's just not much of a great person, first of all, but not a great president either. Millard Fillmore didn't really do much either. Like, there's really nothing to know about this guy. He's not special at all. In terms of presidents, he's going F tier. And we got John Tyler, another guy, didn't really do much. I think I'll put him at D. He didn't really do much. There's not much else to say. He wasn't terrible, but he didn't do much. Because he was actually succeeded by James Polk, who ended up overseeing the Gold Rush. But that's either here or there. Thomas Jefferson. Theoretically, if Jefferson practiced what he preached, he'd be an S tier. But he didn't. So I'll put him at A. I think Jefferson, his philosophy of governing on paper would have been the best, but in reality it really wasn't. He was a big fan of like small government, keep your nose out of my business kind of thing, but I don't know, he really wasn't that. He's kind of a big government player. Obama, B tier. Obamacare, wars in the Middle East, recession, 2008. I think he's definitely a good president. He's very influential right now, by the way. Very good speaker, very smart guy. I just don't think he's an A or an S tier. He's the first African American to ever be elected. It's a pretty big deal, but I can't put him any higher than that. Then Trump. I know this may ruffle some feathers, but I'll put Trump at a B tier. I see a lot of people saying, oh yeah, he should be all the way to F. Worst president in history. No, he's not. In terms of governing, he had the largest tax cut in history. Economy was doing really well before coronavirus. And, he ended up signing a deal with North Korea, got rid of the Iran nuclear agreement, which, by the way, Obama did, which worked to some extent, but it didn't really work in the long term. And Trump also imposed a lot of tariffs on China, which is a pretty big deal. But I don't think I could put him at an S or an A, because overall, he kind of was a neocon in terms of foreign policy. He did a lot of neocons like John Bolton, Gina Haspel, and Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. So, can't say that he was, anti-war, which a lot of people, or at least he says that he is, but he's not. But yeah, that's my tier ranking for all the U.S. presidents. If you want to see me make another tier ranking for like Canadian prime ministers or other leaders or wars or whatever it may be, honestly, it could be anything. Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.